Welcome to the Boxing Source Midweek Report, where we tackle the latest topics in the sport of boxing here up to this point every single Wednesday. Time to start the show. Yo, yo, hold up. Hopefully you're able to see what's up and what's going on right here, right now, what's going down. We have a multi-stream thing going on here as we should be live on YouTube, Rumble, and Instagram. So you should be able to see me on multiple platforms here. Hopefully you got everything that's showing here live. So we got all this stuff going down right here, right now. You feel me? With that being said, what's up, everybody? This is the Midweek Report for January 7th, 2026. What's good, everybody? Shout out to everyone that's checking in through YouTube and everything like that. My guy Jesus Sam in the building. You know what I'm saying? Salute to you. Those on Rumble also. If you're subscribed on to the channel or joined the channel on Rumble, big thanks for y'all. If you're able to follow us on Rumble, you could do that. Or on Instagram, you know what I'm saying? You could follow on Instagram and, hit up the channel on YouTube. So we got, multiple platforms that we're going to be, on here with these lives. We're going to start doing more of these lives where you're going to be able to see us on either Rumble, YouTube, or Instagram. You know what I'm saying? But in order to like chime in and things like that, you might have to jump in through YouTube or something like that. Or if you want to hit the thing as far as like joining in live, just hit me up and you'll be able to get the link to do that. My guy Ron Goodall is in the building, man. What's good with you? Chilling here on the Boston Source Midweek Report. I know we got a number of things that's going on here this weekend. We got a number of fights that's coming up this month as well. So, we're going to be talking about a couple of those here in this edition of the Midweek Report. But also, what we got to do is we got to see, what's up with, what's going down later in the month. And then you'll also tackle some things that were said in reference to a couple of either events that are going to happen or might happen. So that's what we're going to do here in this rundown of the Midweek Report. You know what I'm saying? So, we're doing all of that here. And I wanted to kind of like tackle a couple of things here when it comes to this, because, of course, we got this weekend over at the Barclays Center in New York City, the fight card there. So I'm going to see here if I'm able to share this thing with the joint here, right? So hold on a second. Let's see if we got it here, man. I'm like, yeah, we should be able to do this here. Let me see if I'm able to, get that going here real quick. But if not, then we should be able to run something else here a little bit different. So let me see here if I'm able to share the screen. If you're able to see it on YouTube, yeah, you should be able to see it on YouTube here. But we got the schedule for the Barclays Center here, as you got Subriel Matias going up against Dalton Smith, right? And that is for that WBC Super Lightweight Championship. So we got that. That's on the screen. You should be able to see it on the screen there. And you're going to have a number of these other fights that are on that schedule, including Emmanuel Rodriguez versus Fernando Diaz. You got Keith Colon there also against Alberto Guevara. Alfredo Santiago versus Henry Cedeno is on that card as well. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing there, on that front. With that being said, we are gonna, kind of like talk about this thing here with the main event, right? You got Subriel Matias going up against Dalton Smith. You have Subriel Matias there with a record of 23 wins, 2 losses, 0 draws, making that first offense of the WBC Super Lightweight title against Dalton Smith there, who is undefeated at 18-0, right? Of course, Subriel Matias has been the IBF champion there at Super Lightweight, and had made a run there with that type of thing with the IBF title before losing it there, and after losing it, then he had a couple of wins, then went up against Alberto Puello last year at Queens, New York, and was able to win by decision to become the WBC champion, right? So, with him being the WBC champ, Now this is his first defense against Dalton Smith, and of course, he had the thing in reference to what was going down when Subriel Matias won that WBC belt. He was talking about, oh, they could fight this guy, they could fight this guy, and then all of a sudden you had, Turkey Al Sheik out there, man, and he's like, no, 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 you fight, you fight, mandatory Dalton Smith, and hey, you had Super Matias is like, man, he don't care, man. I'm ready. It doesn't matter. I'm ready. I'm ready. But I kind of like found it a little bit amusing that you would have all of that stuff that was going down last year, and it was a Ring Magazine event. But then when it came to actually having a fight between Subriel Matias and Dalton Smith, did we see it happening over in Riyadh in November? No. They tried to, have this thing here as the main event for something by itself. Okay, cool. Ended up being going to purse bid or whatever it is. And then, well, you have Fresh Productions ended up winning the purse bid. So that's what you have here. Fresh Productions hosting this thing here for this upcoming event at the Barclays Center. All right. So, with Subriel Matias making this defense here, of course, with his 23 wins, all but one of those victories was by knockout, of course, with that decision over Alberto Puello being the only win that he had that went with the distance. And then with Dalton Smith there at 18-0, he's 18-0 there with 13 of those wins by way of knockout, and he is there at 28 years old in comparison to a Subriel Matias there who is at 33. But Subriel Matias has had that whole moniker of him being one of the more fearsome or feared fighters within that division, right? Because of that knockout ratio and a couple of results that happened over the course of his professional career. But here he's going to be going up against Dalton Smith. That should be. Hold on, just a second. Let me see here what's going on. Just bear with me real quick. Hold on. So we had this going on here. Let me see. You should be able to. Hopefully, you're able to see me on this joint here. But let's see, because it has this. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the camera joint. All right, yeah, there we go. Yeah, we should be back. But this thing just kind of like cut something here real quick. You feel me? All right. So I had to like redo something here in a second, but we'll just run with this here so far on the YouTube portion. All right. With that being said, I was talking about this thing with Dalton Smith. He has those 13, what is that, 13 wins by way of knockout over his 18 overall wins, having that last bout against Matthew Germain back in April. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, does he, is he going to be having a serious shot here against Subriel Matias? Now, on the odds, man, they're saying like, hey, Dalton Smith could, he's getting a good number of picks because on the books, they only have Subriel Matias at like minus 150 or like minus 160 on the books. And they got Dalton Smith at like plus 138. So that's very close to even odds, y'all. That's very close to even odds. That's like, crazy, there on that front because, I would think given that, you have a bunch of the things going down with Subriel Matias that he would end up, being a overall favorite. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, I'm kind of leaning towards Subriel Matias because the thing with Matias is he has that, that come forward style and, being up there and everything like that, right? But, with that being said, like he's kind of the guy that kind of wears you down, volume punching, but just like, hey, okay, yeah, I don't really have much as far as like defense or moving around, but I'm gonna be like, yo, and that's if I feel like you could hurt me, I'm gonna just still walk you down. I'm gonna just walk you down, break you down, and eventually you're going to wilt once I, continue to apply the pressure round after round after round. We've seen, of course, his bout against Alberto Puello, where Alberto Puello kind of like uses boxing and kind of like fighting off of his back foot to keep away from Subriel Matias. But once it got to within range for both fighters, you seen Subriel Matias get to the body, work him, break him down a little bit, and then that's why he had like most of the advantage going into those last few rounds. And with that, he ended up getting the what was it, like the split decision victory or so there in order to win the WBC belt there for Subriel Matias, right? So with that, I mean, I would say that he's going to have that similar type of style with his opponent there in Dalton Smith. The only thing is that Dalton Smith, I'm not sure if you're going to have Smith being able to properly hurt Subriel Matias. My God, here BVO Sports in the building, man. Salute to you. Happy New Year, and salute. Of course, supporting the boxing source here on this joint here. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like I said, I got Subriel Matias here. With the advantage and things like that to get the win here in this one. Um, I'm saying it could be late stoppage. For me, it with Dalton Smith, I seen that he has these wins over Matthew Germain, as I mentioned. Jose Zepeda, he was able to stop Jose Zepeda back in 2024. But like I said, with the style that you have there with Subriel Matias, I think it's going to be too much pressure for Dalton Smith to be able to keep his activity going for the course of 12 rounds. You know what I mean? I know that we've had like a little bit of a discussion of sorts when it comes to Subriel Matias and the whole thing with this testing and all that type of stuff. But I mean, hey, WBC said it wasn't enough to be over, I guess, a limit. The New York State Athletic Commission, I guess they said the same thing of sorts. So you can't necessarily say that, hey, you can't say it is what it is on that front. You feel me? So, with that being said, that's why, I kind of like have it to the point where it's like, all right, will you have it to where you could say Subriel Matias did a little bit too much there as far as like being in between fights and that type of stuff? Yeah, I don't know. But outside of that, I would say, hey, look, you got to go ahead and say, hey, you can't necessarily, excuse him or whatever it is, but still, he's still able to have this fight. And the WBC made their ruling in reference to it, and they said, hey, yeah, he's able to have this fight, but outside of that, if you test like positive for any type of thing here after this fight, yeah, you can't have the belt. If you win, you can't have the belt no more. And you could potentially have another fight here going up against Alberto Puello in the rematch. That's what they originally, slated. But as I was mentioning in the past, you got a WBC champion currently there in Subriel Matias, but then you also have a WBC interim champion there in Isaac Pitbull Cruz. So it's like, okay, you got an interim champion, you got a full world champion, he has a mandatory challenger that he's facing, and then you got him fighting someone else in a rematch while still having an interim champ. But hey, that's how this thing is sorted out here when it comes to that super lightweight division. You feel me? But outside of that, I would say that it should be a pretty good fight for as long as it lasts. I mean, like I said, I got Subriel Matias there for the stoppage. I would say late stoppage there on that. Again, this is at the Barclays Center headlining that fight card. It's going to be on pbv.com. And, I've had some comments in reference to like how the event has been handled and all that type of stuff. But hey, we're just in the middle of fight week. This should be what, you probably have a press conference here coming up tomorrow, and that, you have the weigh-in that's going to be on Friday, for this thing, right? With that, as I was mentioning there, you're also going to have Alfredo Santiago versus Henry Cedeno on this card there. That one, I would say that is going to be an interesting bout because that is also within the super lightweight division, but you're going to have the uh, WBO rankings involved with that one. All right. You got, Alfredo Santiago that's, rated there in the WBO rankings, also with Henry Cedeno too, right? So that's the thing that you were kind of like looking at. I was going to try to pull that up here real quick, right? You got, Henry Cedeno there at number 10. Let me see if I could, run it here on this particular screen real quick. Hold on just a second because I wanted to see if I could add this on here. Let's see. All right, bet. So we got that. And you're going to be able to see this here on YouTube here with the rankings, right? You got, the thing there with Keyshawn Davis, they're rated at number 1. But, you also see there Henry Cedeno is there, and Alfredo Santiago should be there in the rankings. He's there at number 2. It says Alfredo Alvarez, but that's Alfredo Santiago. Like, he's rated at number 2. So you're gonna have number 2 and number 10 in that fight, right? So that's going to be a pretty interesting bout there within the super lightweight division. Of course, you got Teofimo Lopez that's going to be fighting Shakur Stevenson for the WBO belt, right? So you're going to see a lot of mix up or, things going on within the rankings of the WBO at 140 pounds this month, just with that, you know what I mean? Also, with, the thing as far as Pollo, you see Pollo that's out there, as I mentioned, he should be waiting in the wings for the winner of Subriel Matias versus Dalton Smith. He's there at number 5 in the WBO, but number 2 in the WBC because they're pretty much saying he's next in line for that WBC world title shot. All right. So that kind of like shows you the whole situation there with the rankings at 140 pounds, given those two bouts that you see there. Like I said, Subriel Matias versus Dalton Smith, and you got Alfredo Santiago versus Henry Cedeno that's on this card, right? You also have, Emmanuel Rodriguez there in the bantamweight division facing Fernando Diaz, Javier Centron versus Victor Sandoval, Nestor Bravo versus Pedro Campa, and Keith Colon versus Alberto Guevara. So that kind of like covers like what's going down there within that fight card at the Barclays Center. Once again, it is going to be on ppv.com. Once again, shout out to everyone that's been able to listen in, whether it's through YouTube, Rumble, or Instagram. All right. Shout out to y'all on that. I don't know what happened here on Rumble. There was like something where I had like a thing there that was going on with the camera, but then it ended up like cutting out. So that's why it kind of like blanked out there for a little bit. You feel me? But outside of that, we should be all good. Word. And I wanted to get to the next thing here because I wanted to see about Rick Mirigian. Oh man, Rick Mirigian. Let me see here because I did have this thing kind of like queued up for what he kind of like posted on Instagram. It was like Instagram stories or something like that, right? Because he's there on Instagram and he said that he was like making these posts here. So let me see here if I could share this thing, right? So you have Rick Mirigian making this post right here. People making real moves out there in anticipation for them Ortiz Ennis tickets. Like, come on, man. Like this is what you got right here. But real quick, man, I'm gonna see here if I'm able to have a panelist join here on with us to talk about some boxing. Here should be the boxing academic checking in here in the building. Here, what's going on?
What's up, JR? Just checking in, man.
Hey, all good, man. All good, man. Salute to you, man. Happy New Year, all that type of stuff, man. So,
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
what's happening? I know we got this world title fight that's coming up with Subriel Matias and Dalton Smith, but as I said, just being honest, there ain't really been that much buzz on that joint there, man. like what would be your thoughts about like that fight? Because with it not having like a major network tied to it, it would be like some work for people to actually watch it, unless if they know that they got to go to pvv.com in order to check it out.
Yeah, the only I hadn't really been following it. The most that I've been connected with it is through um you and Matt sort of talk when y'all spoke about it, or it might have been you and Joseph. I'm not sure, but I heard about it through you, and the lack of sort of support with the fight, and for eyes to be able to see it. So I don't really
Yeah,
have high thoughts on anything about it. So sorry.
yeah. I mean, the thing about it is like, if you didn't necessarily like, if it's not on the zone, or if it ain't on no like say Amazon Prime or something like that, and you don't like have a necessarily a thing there for a outlet towards it, then it's like you wouldn't really know much about it. So that's why I'm like, here we are about a few days away from that fight taking place, or that fight card taking place. And yeah, it's not really getting that much, buzz behind it. You feel me? So, with that being said, I'm like, even though the odds say it might be a close fight or whatever it is, who knows like how many people are going to be able to tune in live, unless if you're there at the Barclays Center for it. You know what I mean? um and then it got, like I said, I was bringing up this thing here when it comes to the potential fight between Vergil Ortiz Jr. and Boots Ennis. You got Rick Mirigian here, who is the manager for Vergil Ortiz Jr., having these posts out here that's, through Instagram, saying that folks are making moves in anticipation for, the Vergil Ortiz versus Boots Ennis tickets. But, the thing about it is like, I'm not all too sure, if they, really have this fight taking place. He also made this statement about like, always know your value and defend it outside the ring as in it. There with the picture of Vergil Ortiz Jr. So it's like he's almost like teasing like the fight's like pretty close to happening, but as some people have posted there, and from what I've heard, like the fight ain't really been signed yet. They really haven't worked out the kinks as far as like the financials are concerned. And is it like, what would it take in order for this fight to actually take place? How much money would be involved? Where would it be hosted at? Like, who would be able to be like, as they say, like quote unquote A side, B side with this? And it's been a lot of talk ever since Vergil Ortiz had his last fight against Erickson Lubin. But it's more about, okay, should they just stop with all the talking and just get in the room, or have these conference calls and just get it done? Because the zone wants the fight to happen. It's just how much money will it take in order for the fight to actually happen? You know what I mean? So that's what they got, man. But I'm not sure how the whole thing will end up there with Vergil Ortiz and Boots Ennis on that front, man. But I don't know if you had like any takes on it.
Well, I will say that this doesn't necessarily help, um, at least from what you hear people talk about Boots being from Black Twitter. This don't help his case in terms of people sort of getting a bit tiresome or restless that he hadn't found a bigger name to sort of get in the ring with. And I'm sure some of it ain't his fault, some of it is his fault, but I mean, he need to get it done. I mean, we need to see him in there with better names and people who actually have a shot. And the same thing with Vergil Ortiz. I mean, this would make the most sense, but the business of boxing, who knows?
Yeah, that's the thing about it, is the business of boxing. And on the front there with Vergil Ortiz, and who like who he's working with, they say like he's pretty much getting offers, or has an offer out there to potentially fight Errol Spence Jr. And they say like, hey, he could be offered up to $4 million or $5 million. That's the word that I was hearing in reference to Vergil Ortiz Jr. potentially facing Errol Spence, right? So if he's getting something like that on the table, then what can they offer for a fight against Jerome Boots Ennis? Will he get more interest in a fight against Errol Spence Jr. than a Boots Ennis? Yeah, but how much more interest would it be when you have something that could be the most intriguing fight out there within the 154-pound division right now between Ennis and Vergil Ortiz? So if you like, say for example, if they offered like 3.5 for the Boots fight, like how much of a difference do you think that would be in comparison to Errol Spence Jr.? The thing about it is that you're getting a 5 million because it's Errol Spence Jr. You wouldn't get anything close to that anywhere else. So that's why, like, the proposal or any proposal for a Boots fight is probably the highest that you could get at this point. So my take is like this: if he didn't have that Errol Spence Jr. fight potentially on the table, how much money could he basically generate on his own? And I'm not necessarily sure like how much that could be. You know what I mean? If it wasn't like a Boots Ennis, if it was somebody else that's there within the 154-pound division, like even Jamel Charlo, if Jamel Charlo was active, or one of these other champions that's out there, like a Xander Zayas, or maybe a Sebastian Fundora, right? Because you have Vergil Ortiz as a WBC interim champion there at 154 with Fundora as a full champion. But if he's not necessarily generating enough interest on that front, then how are you gonna say that, hey, I might need more than 3.5 or more than $3 million to fight Boots Ennis, when you can't necessarily find that anywhere else within the 154-pound division? So that's the business of boxing for you. But hopefully we get some things done in reference to that. But with Rick Mirigian making these posts, it's more about him kind of like being out in the public and that type of stuff. And me, I don't really do that whole Black Twitter type of stuff in reference to that front. So yeah, I know some people might say what they say in reference to Boots, but he's not necessarily public like that. Like, he's not going to be posting on social media like that. And so with that being said, that just allows the critics and stuff to say what they want as much as they want without much of a reply, because he's not going to be spending much time on social media replying to folks. That's kind of like different than some other fighters that we know. All right. So I'll just put it like that. You feel me? Oh man. Anything else you got on that?
No, I mean, if you have a Errol Spence fight or a Boots fight that's potential, I mean, nobody can't fault Vergil Ortiz for wanting to take the Errol Spence fight. But for his career, that means probably more for him financially. Maybe not. I mean, it's good to have Errol Spence on your record as far as legacy, but
Mm,
unless Errol Spence beat him, that's sort of like I mean, wouldn't rank as high as a Boots win. That's all I'm saying.
got it. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, shout out to Sizzle. It says like Vergil Ortiz don't want to see Boots. That's why he's dragging his feet. He said he's smart to wait on the Xander versus Barao fight to happen before fully committing. I mean, hey, if you have something where Xander Zayas gets the win over Abbas Barao on January 31st and becomes unified champion, then you could have a potential fight between Zayas and Vergil Ortiz that could be, I don't know, over in New York or something or whatever, that could really generate a lot of interest there. Like, you could have Puerto Rico versus Mexico or that type of thing going on there. If you have Xander Zayas get the win over Abbas Barao, but that would be a another interesting fight there that's out there for Vergil Ortiz Jr. But it's not like folks are in a rush to say that they want to fight Vergil Ortiz Jr. mostly for the money part because they don't necessarily have a gauge of what Vergil Ortiz Jr. is worth right now. Even with this one fight against Erickson Lubin, that's not, giving you much of a, much of an indicator on that front. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, we got to see how this whole thing develops with Vergil Ortiz and Boots Ennis, and once that happens, then we'll see how that goes. He said, like, yeah, the zone ain't paying for Spence. Yeah, he would have to, be on the B side, right? Is PBC willing to put on that fight? So are they willing to put on that fight? Depends on like how much they trying to that how much it would cost for it. If they're saying like the report is that $5 million could be offered to Vergil Ortiz Jr. for that bout against Errol Spence. One, how much do you think Errol Spence would be getting for that fight? And then two, where would they be hosting it at where they would be able to generate the revenue that they need in order to, make that fight be profitable on, all sides? If you're gonna be having at least one of these fighters having $5 million in the purse, you can't have it in no Texas. I'm sorry, you just can't. It just doesn't work. Like Texas doesn't have the like you wouldn't say they have the site fee that they could put up in comparison to like a Las Vegas. So it would have to be somewhere like in Las Vegas. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna do that, then are you going to say that there's enough interest from people or fight fans to say, hey, we could see Errol Spence Jr. back in the ring for the first time since 2023 against Vergil Ortiz Jr., who's there undefeated. Like I said, he has an interim championship, not really a full championship, but an interim championship. And that it would be like a all Texas battle that would be held in Vegas. That's kind of like how it would be boosted up as. So I don't know how that would kind of like work out, for both fighters if they do try to make it happen. But other than that, like I'm not sure if that particular thing is going to go down because for me, I just don't really feel like Errol Spence is really like that inclined to get back in the ring. There's been a lot of talk about this over the past couple of years, like ever since 2024 when you had Sebastian Fundora beat Tim Tszyu the first time there back in March of 2024, and you've seen Errol Spence in the ring, but we hadn't seen much else after that. So, like, what can you make of it? Not that much.
You know what fight that does that is making more and more sense?
What would that be?
Spence versus Keith Thurman.
I knew it was going to be Keith Thurman that you were going to say. You were going to say Keith Thurman.
Is it not making more sense with
Uh,
the paths of both of their careers?
I mean, it would. I mean, the thing is, given the rumors that we kind of like put out yesterday on War Week that we might not even get Fundora versus Thurman, then that could like open a possibility. But we've all heard about Errol Spence and what he thinks about Keith Thurman and not having a fight with Keith Thurman. But hey,
How many paydays has he had? When was his last payday? And I'm not
uh,
trying to be funny when I say that, but
I
seriously,
know, I know. It's just that sometimes with Errol Spence, what he when he says what it is, and it pretty much is what it is. So that's why I'm like doubtful on that thing in reference to Keith Thurman in reference to that. Bull Rider says that Ortiz versus Boots would sell out AT&T Stadium for sure. Yeah, it would. It's just that how much would that overall gate be in comparison to having a fight over in Las Vegas or something like that. Like for example, when you had Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders, that was there at AT&T Stadium. Compare that to like a Canelo versus Caleb Plant, where it was for undisputed at the time, but still it's Vegas, so you're gonna get a higher site fee, higher ticket prices and things like that. So you could have like 40 or 45,000 or so there at AT&T Stadium, but it's still not going to be as lucrative as a fight in like MGM Grand Garden Arena or T-Mobile Arena. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so that's the thing on that. Shout out to Levon King there in the building. It says Spence versus Boots makes sense to me. Test for both fighters. Hey, listen, man. Hey, if there was like any fight that could be out of the blue that would really shock people if they announced it, it would be Spence versus Boots. Now would be like that would be an old snap moment right there. If you have Errol Spence versus Jerron Boots and it's be announced or something like that, that would be crazy on that front. You feel me?
And
Um,
who got something to lose is Spence.
I mean, you could, you know, it's just like, but hey, but it would be a fight that like people really be buzzing about. You know what I'm saying? It said two sizzle here in the building says Spencer mess around and beat Vergil. Hey man, hey, but the thing about it is like, well, Spence, he has his things there as far as like management and everything like that, but from the time that he was stepping in the ring after the Fandora versus Zoo fight in 2024 up until now, who do they say is his trainer? We ain't got no word of him, having a trainer or getting with anybody to kind of like be in the gym and that type of stuff. So until we get any type of news on that, then that would show like there isn't anything close for him to stepping in the ring on that front. You know what I mean?
Would the Virgil Hunter Andre Ward style fit Errol Spence? The infighting part of the Andre Ward style, would that fit him?
I mean, it could, but I thought like he was kind of like that anyway, as far as like getting in and try to slip around and then just dig in and that type of thing. I thought that was more of his style. The only thing that he had like from a mid range and the outside was his jab, but outside of that, like he didn't really like utilize movement or timely movement and that type of thing. It was more of an offensive type of fighter. You know what I mean? That kind of like was straightforward when it comes to defense. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
I'm
I thought,
asking. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, but I thought it was kind of like Andre Ward on the inside as far as like digging in and kind of at least having some defensive stance on the inside, but also like working more than his opponent on that front.
Yeah, so I'm saying it from the perspective of at this point, like you could take the AJ approach, which is get a totally new trainer with totally new techniques, and you try to get something from everybody. But I don't think that has made necessarily made AJ a better fighter per se. Like, yeah, you need a trainer that can give you wrinkles and help you do what you want to do. Deontay Wilder, for example, with with his last trainer when he learned everything, all his new stuff, and it was too
Mhm.
much stuff for him to take on as an older fighter. If Deontay Wilder has a trainer, they need to take advantage of the 1-2, and what comes off of that. So I'm saying Andre Ward's trainer, old trainer, as someone who would take Spence's style and not necessarily overhaul it, but amplify it in a sense, and maybe add a wrinkle or two that he can add in there that'll allow him to fight on the outside or do something different other than that. But you can't change who he is at this point, and bringing in another style will only hurt him.
Yeah, I mean, my thing would be like if he had someone like a Ronnie Shields, maybe that kind of like would kind of work, or at least build on the style that Errol Spence already has, and then give him a added wrinkle because Ronnie Shields has basically worked with anybody and everybody, in the sport of boxing there on that front. A two sizzle says that hey, talking profits, PBC is in position to have to make money or they're not going for it. No financial losses. I mean, given their status when it comes to quote unquote network deals, because you can't necessarily say that Amazon Prime is like a network on that sense. they don't necessarily have it to the point where, okay, we got this locked in, the dates and all that type of stuff locked in. I don't think it really works like that. But if they know that they could have a fighter that generates enough interest to put them on or headline an event, and then say, okay, we could pay these fighters this amount of money because we know that we're getting it back, then yeah, they're gonna go for it. You know what I mean? But outside of that, you're not really gonna see that type of stuff there because, like, even with the last pay per view they had there, December 6th, with of course Isaac Cruz versus Lamont Rose Jr. That card overall was a great card, but did it get the response as far as like overall buys that they were looking for? I don't know. See, he said also like Spence needs a quality corner man, like a Freddie Roach type of a guy, or someone like a high IQ that could suggest adjustments and give a second, pair of eyes. Like, yeah, like I said, like Ronnie Shields, Buddy McGirt is another one. Abel Sanchez, he's probably a guy that would kind of like fit the style like Errol Spence may have as Abel Sanchez, but I also like that Buddy McGirt as a suggestion as well. You know what I mean? So, but we'll see how that goes on that front. To see like how that go, if he does actually make that decision, because we see him out there, like he attended the fight with Vergil Ortiz Jr. and Eric Lubin. He was, of course, at the fights out there in San Antonio because he did see Frank Martin, who he manages, there get that win over Rancis Barthélemy. But outside of that, you ain't really seen much of nothing as far as like him being any closer to getting in the ring and that type of stuff, unless if maybe Al and them made a phone call and said, "Hey, we got this. We could give you this amount of money, and you fight, either like a Vergil Ortiz Jr. or somebody to get you back. Is that good enough?" And he'll be the one to make that decision. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see how that goes. But as far as like him versus Vergil Ortiz, yeah, I'm not sure about all that. Unless if you could have someone like Rick Mirigian say, "Oh snap, yeah, we got what we looking for. We got what we looking for," and it's not Boots. It's gonna be like a Errol Spence Jr. But I don't know about how that's gonna go. You know what I'm saying? Uh, Two Sizzle at why pay Virgil heavy change when Spence is a draw? Yeah, we can make the same profit with a cheaper opponent. Yes, Spence selling out AT&T. Virgil, not so much. Okay, yeah, because I mean we saw the thing there with Virgil Ortiz in his fight against Erickson Lubin over there in Fort Worth, Texas, man. And well, y'all, folks saw the attendance for that, so that was pretty much your gauge is what Vergil Ortiz Jr. can draw. So if you see that that's what they're doing, then why put that much towards Vergil Ortiz in the fight against Errol Spence Jr. or somebody like that? Like I don't see it, especially when he's not even part of your group or your promotional company. Like Vergil Ortiz is there with Golden Boy. So you mean to tell me that you're gonna pay off Golden Boy to have those rights or whatever it is? Yeah, I know you're working with Golden Boy for Ryan Garcia versus Mario Barrios, but this right here is going to be completely different because Vergil Ortiz Jr. is definitely not a Ryan Garcia on that front. You feel me? Shout out my guy Trill Clinton in the building. He said them against each other will sell, though opponents do matter. Yeah, especially in Texas. Yeah, for sure. Because yeah, in Texas, of course, that would sell out. Whether you have AT&T Stadium, you could have 50,000 or 60,000 there that they would allow for that type of event for AT&T Stadium. Yeah, it's going to sell out. But how much will that reflect on the gate in comparison to, as I mentioned earlier, if they had to fight in Las Vegas? So that's where that whole thing comes in for Errol Spence versus Vergil Ortiz Jr. If it was going to be in Texas or if it was going to be in Las Vegas or something like that. Right? So that's what I had on that front. And I did kind of like bring up on the main topics there that you did have the WBC president Mauricio Sulaiman mention that you would have the fight between Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani be in Tokyo, Japan. Yes, you do have Naoya Inoue, undisputed champion at 122. Junto Nakatani, former WBC champion at 118, did move up to 122 in on December 27th in a good, it was a good bout that he had there against Francisco, what was it, Rodriguez or something like that, right? But ended up getting a decision win there, and you had Inoue getting a. Excuse me, that was Sebastian Hernandez. I said Francisco Rodriguez, man. What am I doing? That but Nakatani got that decision win over Sebastian Hernandez on December 27th. Inoue got the decision win over David Picasso on that same card. So that says, all right, now we gonna see these two guys do get out on Cinco de Mayo weekend, but you have, the WBC president Mauricio Sulaiman mentioning that it's going to be there in Tokyo, Japan. Hey, it better be in Tokyo, Japan, because I don't know what they had over there in Riyadh, but you can't have a fight of this magnitude not be in Japan. That would be crazy if they would try to move it elsewhere. And the thing about it is, it's like some fights don't necessarily have to be in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, or something like that. Would it get like some people would say it would get a bigger guarantee? Not with these two fighters. I don't think so. Not in Japan. No, that would stop. That would completely stop Japan right there. That's like saying if you would have had Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury not in Wembley Stadium, if they were going to fight, and it wouldn't be in Wembley Stadium, it would be in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Like, there's no way that you would not have that fight in Wembley Stadium. So with this, you gotta have this particular fight, the biggest fight that would be in Japan. It has to be in Tokyo. It has to be in the Tokyo Dome, and they could mark up the prices for tickets at the Tokyo Dome by 5 times over. It would still sell out. You know what I mean? So that's the thing that I would see in reference to this bout, and it's like one of the more highly anticipated bouts of 2026 here, at least so far, because what we got is coming up. I would say the fights that's on the 31st of January. There, you got that Teofimo Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson. You got the thing as far as like Ryan Garcia versus Mario Barrios, which I mentioned. They say that it could be February 21st, but as rumors are saying, it might not be February 21st. Might end up being March 21st. So, but we'll see on that front. And then other than that, you might have the thing there with David Benavidez, going up from light heavyweight to cruiserweight to face Zerto Ramirez. That might be on that same weekend. We'll see. But outside of that, Inoue versus Nakatani is like the biggest fight that's out there so far that's locked in for 2026. You know what I mean? Says Trill, shout out to Trill, he says, yeah, that's like comparing the Super Bowl and Major League Baseball's All-Star Weekend Riyadh in Tokyo. Yeah, yep, that's true. That's true. It's like, yeah, you can have the whole thing with All-Star Weekend for Major League Baseball, and you had the home run derby and all this other stuff and the actual All-Star game, but that's not the Super Bowl. Like, the whole country here in the US stops for the Super Bowl, man. Regardless of who you root for, you're still gonna end up watching the Super Bowl, right? So here, like with this fight, man, it's like it's like it's NHL's All Star Weekend. Talk about Riyadh, yeah, that's funny right there. Oh man, but yeah, that's why, like I say, you gotta have it there in Tokyo. Now I ain't saying that I would have the funds to go out there, but if I did, listen, that's an event that I would go to. Like, having one of those experiences as, either covering the sport of boxing or as a boxing fan, you gotta go see a fight over at the Tokyo Dome. You know what I mean? And for someone that's actually went out to Wembley Stadium to watch a fight, then here the the Tokyo Dome would be another one of those venues that you would want to be at. Like if you got Madison Square Garden, you got I would say MGM Grand Garden Arena, not necessarily T-Mobile because T-Mobile is more of the newer type of venues for boxing. So I would say MGM Grand Garden Arena. You would have Wembley Stadium, and you have the Tokyo Dome. It's pretty much like four of like five venues you would probably go to as a boxing fan. You know what I mean? Bull Rider says he thinks Nakatani's stock fell due to his last fight. Oh yeah, it did. It did. I mean, it was a good. Hey, I say it was a good fight. Um, but hey, that dude out there, man, Sebastian Hernandez, like he was there, like taking a number of punches, especially in that first half of the fight. But Junto Nakatani, I guess his movement and his like punching, what he was doing on there, wasn't necessarily enough to really affect Sebastian Hernandez. And then at the second half of the fight, you've seen the activity level of Nakatani drop down significantly there. So as far as like this upcoming fight between Nakatani and Inoue, yeah, definitely lean towards Inoue there for getting the win. And I think it would be by a pretty good margin. I mean, they got like early odds as Inoue being a minus 550 favorite over Junto Nakatani right now. So that kind of like tells you what they're kind of viewing Naoya Inoue as a favorite over Junto Nakatani at this point is. What we got here? Does anybody know who's on the Zuffa card? Hey, it's supposed to have Raul Valenzuela on it. Like I had mentioned it here with in a conversation, but I don't even know if Raul Valenzuela got an opponent. It's supposed to like involve a number of K2 fighters, so to speak. So if you know fighters that have been signed to the K2 promotions, they'll be on this card. Man, I even forgot who was basically supposed to be on this main event that's coming up on the 24th, man. So, and they're supposed to have another event, a Zuffa event on the 30th, so it's like, hey, I don't know. We probably just gonna have to look it up there, see if Zuffa Boxing has something on the front and see how they kind of like see who would be on that card. But like for me, I ain't even really paying much attention. Just being honest with y'all, I ain't really paying much attention to that particular card, especially when you have your world title fights coming up. I talk about what's going on this weekend. In a couple of weeks, you're gonna have the IBF title within 135 pounds on the line, right? Because you're gonna have that thing with Andy Cruz and um, and Ray Murataya, right? So I ain't even seeing much as far as like that type of buzz for that fight card. You know what I mean? And you also have Moses Atama versus Jermaine Franklin on January 24th. So I'm like, Zuffa Boxing, good luck to them. Just being real with you. Good luck to them. All right. Because the thing is like they got that deal with Paramount Plus. As long as they got that deal and that guarantee, man, they don't even really care about this stuff as far as like who's gonna be at the fights or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It says that when the Zuffa contracts look like, nah, mm-mm, mm-mm. Because I mean they had the whole thing as far as like one fighter that was rumored to be signed with Zoo for a TKO, and apparently that wasn't the case. He ended up signing with Samson Lukowicz. So there you go. And the way that they had it is like they get paid a certain amount, and you can't get sponsorships. So it's almost like UFC. Like, come on, what? So you mean to tell me that you're gonna try to have boxers or fighters be involved in your organization and not get sponsorships and get paid this certain amount? Nah, I don't know how far that's going to fly. I don't know how far that's going to go. And the other thing too, as far as like the length of the contract, I don't know because how are they going to be able to sort out one how long the contract's going to be? Like, say for example, it could be for 2 years. I'm going to just say 2 years, right? If it was for 2 years, how many fights do they see or do they think that they're going to have within that 2 year period? You're talking about someone in Dana White that's had these fighters on UFC that under contract for 2, 3, or 4 years, and yet they'll be sitting around for like the entire year waiting on a fight. So how would that work out for these boxers? I'm not sure, but we'll be able to eventually get more as we get closer to these events that's going to be happening there for Zuffa Boxing. But as far as like anything as far as like the amounts and stuff like that, yeah, I don't know much about all of that. And depending on where these fights are going to be at least initially, something tells me that we're not going to get much information about those contracts anyway. All right. So that's what I had on that front, man. Just was going through a number of these topics here, top topics. That's mainly what I got here for the Boston Source Midweek Report. I gotta like fix up a few things when it comes to some technicalities on my end for streaming, but just having this thing fixed here to where I'm able to multi-stream through whether it's YouTube, Rumble, or Instagram. Y'all can follow us on all three of those platforms. You can support on Rumble. Be a follower on Rumble. That could work out as well. It said, yeah, sometimes they fight 11 times a year for UFC fighters, and some of them fight once every 2 years. It says the barrier for entry is a lot lower in MMA. Yeah, that's the thing too. It is. But we'll see if they try to incorporate the same thing in boxing on that front. That's mainly what I got here so far. Anything that you might have boxing academic that you would want to talk about? Because I may be working on a couple of things here in the next few weeks that would be in promotion for a certain event that's happening next month. So we'll see. I don't know if academic was still with us. Don't look like it. All right. So hey, I'll have a different one. I'll have a different one next time around, man. I have a different one. All right. But this came from like the playoffs a couple of years ago, man. So that's why it was free 99. All right. So yeah, that's what I got here, man. I'll be able to have more here coming up on the Boston Source podcast. The schedule for Sunday evening at 7:30 p.m. Y'all be sure to tune in and everything like that. And until next time, folks, I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.